Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida, and today's date, Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, is the evening in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And there's still a little homework here and there, and never seen so much the dog and pony show circus in my entire life in political history. You can say that Joe Biden became the first white privileged president in U.S. history. I've been reading stuff in the past, conspiracy research books, that the president is selected, not elected. It is so blatantly obvious that this occurred. You got all these corporate musical celebrities and folks that are not pro-liberty speaking. Liberty folks speaking. Folks, some people like Lady Gaga wearing some symbolic outfits. Hunger Games. There a possible New World Order message when she sang the national anthem. I'll be very frank. I was listening to watching Beyond the Veil with Chris Geo, and listened to a synopsis, and him and I were like mainly in the same wavelength in these areas. Looks like many folks felt demoralized. President Trump flew out, went to Palm Beach. Some people, Trump supporters, are out there parading wherever they're at. Some folks had tears in their eyes. I'm going to tell you this, folks, to the MAGA activists out there. Don't you ever cry. President Trump is not your Lord and Savior. There's some things I agree with what he done as president. And there's areas I've disagreed with. And I say that in good faith. Folks still believe he rise up to start the insurrection. Right now I can say he's considered a fall guy. It was never an insurrection. It was an inside job. It was an internal operation. And of course, the social media experts out there were mocking him and all that. But it's okay if I have all those tyrannical shitbags in the Capitol. All those career criminals that love centralization, imperialism, and are habitually contempt. Use habitual contempt on the rule of law. Doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans. Central banking will be enhanced. Expect more stuff coming out, spending more money than ever before. Talk about unfit people. You're watching them. They're right in there. And see these inaugural vases and a portrait of a photo, a portrait of some artwork. Come on. One big dog and pony show indeed. Whoever gave that guy his speech, please. Wow, talk about a deception. I'll be very frank. Not the end of the world or end of this country. If everyone in here, regardless if you're a MAGA supporter or not, have the courage to say, I denounce the United States of America as a federal corporation. That would be a great start. You need to throw that to all those elected servants, whether they're federal, state, or local. Read them. Section 28 U.S. Code 3002 in its entirety. especially subsection 15. The United States of America is known to be a federal corporation. Tired of the word democracy? Show me the U.S. Constitution that word exists. It never did and never will. Why I speak like this? Because I'll tell you one thing. I see a lot further than what the mainstream media hacks, pundits, want you to know. All being used one way or the other. Yes, election subterfuge has been around. But it is blatantly crystal clear, in my view, thanks to the electronic balloting machines, which I strongly opposed 20 years ago. Now look what happened. Everything was considered moot, fast-tracked, very treacherous indeed. So the question I have, folks, what can you do? You can do a lot. Use those energies on what the person you supported dearly. Transfer it to the local level. Plant the seed, not a no tree. He doesn't have a magic wand, Joe Biden, nor Kamala Harris. Those 5 executive orders, unimpressive myself. It proves one thing, that people that praise Joe Biden is a Club of Rome sympathizer. New World Order endorser. Including Kamala Harris. Yeah. Talk about the privileged duo. Selected, never elected. What? So you want to see what kind of solutions we have? We have multiple ways of countering their propaganda matrix. 10th Amendment, nullification. There's already stuff in the books that can utilize it against their cause. Got to implement it wisely and use decorum. Couple websites to go to. 10thamendmentcenter.com. Sanctuarycounties.com. Are great starts. If I'm correct, there's one site. I think it's called Dissident of America or the Bill of Rights Defense Committee. They have a link on countering the USA Patriot Act. Remember, 7 states, at least 7 states, over 400 municipalities, counties and cities and towns, supports the Bill of Rights and the federal and state constitutions. All you gotta do is a little reading, folks. And I've used it on my show multiple times. To the MAGA supporters, you want to make America great again? Start locally. Act locally. Don't go in there, I'm a Trump supporter. That's irrelevant. Go in there and says, I'm a registered voter. I'm a registered voter. This is what I don't like. This is what you got to do. I got to do my part too, folks. I admit that. So what I'm going to be talking about, what can happen, and some states are doing Second Amendment nullification challenges. So that's good. It's always about the spiritual warfare, what we're observing. And your rights can never be taken away compromised, or altered, or abolished. Governments can. I noticed Biden wants to end the wall, wants a mandatory mask in federal buildings and lands. What the hell does that mean? That don't make any sense. So you have to wear a mask if you go to the Everglades National Park. Spare me the moment. I haven't read it, but how that person thinks or someone contemplates for him. The Walking Dead. First white privilege and Walking Dead president. And I hate to say that. I don't wish the man ill or anyone I strongly oppose based on their merits. But that's what comes down to it. That's very disturbing. He's being used as well, my friends, whether you like him or not. A lot of blasphemy in what's happening in Washington, D.C., which D.C. stands for demented cesspool. Yep. One big demented cesspool. It's Washington, D.C. for you. So I was never impressed by this. Remember, Calvin Coolidge said, it's legalized larceny, all the crap they're doing right now in this inauguration. TV shows, all this hype. Propaganda 101. Don't buy it, folks. You get sucked in and get swindled once again. Well, enough of that. I want to be talking about a few things here, like 4 things here. What can happen? And this one came from the Epoch Times, based on what's going on. Collaboration between government and big tech, giving rise to totalitarianism, experts warn. This is by Peter Saab, news analyst. Says here, the formation of the totalitarian state is just about complete in America, and the most powerful public and private sector actors unify behind the idea that actions to stamp out dissent can be justified according to several experts on modern totalitarian ideologies. While many have warned about the rise of fascism or socialism in the land of the free, the ideas have largely been vague or fragmented, focusing on individual events or actors. Recent events, however, indicate that seemingly unconnected pieces of the oppression puzzle are fitting together to form a comprehensive system, according to Michael Rechenwald, a retired liberal arts professor at New York University. But many Americans, it appears, have been caught off guard or aren't even aware of the newly forming regime, as the idea of elected officials, government bureaucrats, and large corporations, the established academia, think tanks, and nonprofits, the legacy media, and even seemingly grassroots movements, all working in concert towards some evil purpose, seems preposterous. Is a large portion of the country on a conspiracy? The reality now emerges that no massive conspiracy was in fact needed, merely an ideological alignment and some informal coordination, Rechtenwald argues. Despite the lack of formal overreach in organization, the American socialist regime is indeed totalitarian, as the root of its ideology requires politically motivated coercion, he told the Epoch Times. The power of the regime is not yet absolute, but it's becoming increasingly effective as it erodes the values, checks, and balances against tyranny established by traditional beliefs and enshrined in the American founding. The effects can be seen throughout society. Americans, regardless of their income, demographics, or social stature, are being fired from jobs, getting stripped of access to basic services such as banking and social media, or having their businesses crippled for voicing political opinions and belonging to a designated political underclass. Access to sources of information unsanctioned by the regime is becoming increasingly difficult. Some figures of power and influence are sketching the next step, labeling large segments of society as extremist and potential terrorists who need to be deprogrammed. While the onset of the regime appears tied to events of recent years, the presidency of Donald Trump, the CCP virus pandemic, the Capitol intrusion of January 6th, its roots goes back decades. Is it really totalitarian? Totalitarian regimes are commonly understood are constituting a government headed by a dictator that regiments the economy, censors the media, and quells dissent by force. This is not the case in America, but it's also a misunderstanding of how such regimes functions. Literature on totalitarianism indicates. To claim power, the regimes don't initially need to control every aspect of society through government. Adolf Hitler, leader of the National Socialist Workers' Party in Nazi Germany, used various means to control the economy, including gaining compliance of industry leaders voluntarily through intimidation or through replacing the executives with party loyalists. Similarly, the regime rearing its head in America relies on corporate executives to implement its agenda voluntarily, but also through intimidation by online brigades of activists and journalists who take initiative to launch negative PR campaigns and boycotts to progress their preferred societal structure. Also, Hitler initially didn't control the spread of information via government censorship, but rather through his brigades of street thugs, the brown shirts, who would intimidate and physically prevent his opponents from speaking publicly. The tactics parallels the often successful efforts to cancel and shut down public speakers by activists and violent actors such as Antifa. Dissenting media in America haven't been silenced by the government directly as of yet, but they are stymied in other ways. In the digital age, media largely rely on reaching and growing their audience through social media and web search engines, which are dominated by Facebook and Google. Both companies have in place mechanisms to crack down on dissenting media. Google gives preference in its search results to resources it deems authoritative. Search results indicate the company tends to consider media ideologically close to it to be more authoritative. Oh, sorry about that. One moment, folks. Never mind. Yeah, looks like Okay, no problem. So, I'll say here, such media can produce hit pieces on their competitors, giving Google justification to /authoritativeness of the dissenters. Facebook employs third-party fact-checkers who have the discretion to label content as false and thus reduce the audience on its platform. Virtually all the fact-checkers focused on American content are ideologically aligned with Facebook. Attempts to set up alternative social media have run into yet more fundamental obstacles, as demonstrated by Parler, whose mobile app was terminated by Google and Apple while the company was kicked off Amazon servers. To the degree that a totalitarian regime requires a police state, there is no law in America targeting dissenters explicitly. But there are troubling signs of selective, politically motivated enforcement. Signs that go back to the IRS's targeting of the Tea Party groups, or the difference in treatment received by former Trump advisors Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, both allegedly lying to investigators, but only one getting prosecuted. The situation may still get worse as the restrictions tied to the CCP virus see broad swaths of ordinary human behavior being considered illegal, opening the door to nearly universal political targeting. I think the means by which a police state is being set up is the demonization of Trump supporters and the likely use of medical passports to institute the effective equivalent of social credit scores, Rectenal said. While loyalty to the government and to the specific political party plays a major role, it's the allegiance of the ideological root of totalitarianism that gives its foot soldiers. Literature on the subject indicates totalitarian ideology. The element that holds totalitarianism together as a composite of intellectual elements is the ambition of fundamentally reimaging society. The intention is to create a new man explained under Richard Shorten in Modernism and Totalitarianism, rethinking the intellectual sources of Nazism and Stalinism, 1945 to the present. Various ideologies have framed the ambition differently based on what they posited as the key to the transformation. Karl Marx, co-author of the Communist Manifesto, viewed control of the economy as primary, describing socialism as a socialized man. The associate producers rationally regulated their interchange with nature, bringing it under their common control instead of being ruled by it as by the blind forces of nature. In his Das Kapital, Adolf Hitler, leader of the National Socialist Workers' Party of Nazi Germany, viewed race as primary. People would become socialized, that is transformed and perfected by removing Jews and other supposedly lesser races from society, he claimed. The dominant among the current ideologies stem from the so-called critical theories, which a perfected society is defined by equity, meaning elimination of differences in outcomes for people in demographic categories deemed historically marginalized. The goal is to be achieved by eliminating the ever-present white supremacy. However, the ideologues, currently define it. While such ideologies commonly prescribe collectivism, calling for national or even international unification behind their agenda, they are elitist and dictatorial in practice, as they find mankind never woke enough to follow their agenda voluntarily. In Marx's prophecies, the revolution was supposed to occur spontaneously, yet it never did, leading Vladimir Lenin, the first head of the Soviet Union, to conclude that the revolution will need leadership after all. The idea is that you have some enlightened party who understand the problem of the proletariat better than the proletariat does, and is going to shepherd them through the revolution that they need to have for the greater good, explained James Lindsay, author of Cynical Theories, how activist scholarships made everything about race, gender, and identity, and why this harms everybody. The elements of this intellectual foundation can be found in ideologies of many current political forces, from neo-Nazis and anarcho-communists through to progressives, and to some extent even neoliberals and neoconservatives, Lindsay acknowledged. This is why you see so many people today saying that the only possible answers are a full return to classical liberalism or a complete rejection of liberalism, entirely as fatally disposed to creative progressivism, neoliberalism, etc., he said. This is not to say these ideologies are openly advocating totalitarianism, but rather that they inevitably lead to it. The roadmap could be summarized as follows. 1. There is something fundamentally and intolerably wrong with current reality. 2. There is a plan to fix it requiring a whole society buy-in. 3. People opposing the plan need to be educated about the plan so they accept it. 4. People who resist the persuasion need to be re-educated, even against their will. Involuntary servitude? Damn straight. 5. People who won't accept the plan, no matter what, need to be removed from society. I think that's the general thrust, Lindsay said. We can make the world the way we want it to be if we all just get on the same page and same project. It's a disaster, frankly. Point 4 and 5 now appears to be in progress. Former Facebook executive Alex Stamos recently labeled the widespread questioning of the 2020 election results as violent extremism, which social media companies should eradicate the same way they countered online recruitment content from the ISIS terrorist group. The core issue, he said, that we have given a lot of leeway, both in traditional media and on social media, to people to have a very large, broad range of political views. And this has led to emergence of more and more radical alternative media like OAN and Newsmax. Samos mused about how to reform Americans who've turned into dissenters. How do you bring those people back into the mainstream of fact-based reporting and try to get us all back into the same consensus reality? He asked in a CNN interview. And can you? Is that possible? CNN Brian Stelter added. The logic goes as follows. Trump claimed the election was stolen through fraud and other illegalities. That has not been proven in court and thus is false. People who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and managed to break inside and disrupt the electoral vote counting did so because they believed the election was stolen. Therefore, anybody who questions the legitimacy of the election results as an extremist and potentially a terrorist. So if you question it, they'll label you those areas. Could we say witch hunting? Damn straight. When tens of thousands of troops assembled to guard the inauguration of the President-elect Joe Biden, Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat from Tennessee, recently told CNN that all Guard members who voted for Trump belonged to a suspect group that might want to do something, alluding to past leaders of other countries who were killed by their own people. Former FBI Director James Comey recently said that the Republican Party needs to be burnt down and changed. You hear this? You hear this, folks? Tyrants on parade, but they all want to go after President Trump. See, witch hunting for cowards. If you have that mindset, folks, you're nothing more than a bunch of blatant cowards and wussies. Prove me wrong if you dare. I'd like to see your unmerited comments on my board. They want a one-party state, commented conservative filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza in a recent podcast. This is not to say they do not want an opposition. They want a token opposition. They want Republicans where they get to say what kind of Republican is okay. Just as Marx blamed the ills of the world on capitalists and Hitler's on Jews, the current regime tends to blame various permutations of white supremacy. Remember, folks? Same crap, different package. Expel the Republican members of Congress who incited white supremacist attempted coup, said Representative Cori Bush, Democrat from Missouri, in a recent tweet garnered some 300,000 likes. I'm just wondering how accurate are those likes. She was referring to the Republican lawmakers who raised objections on January 6th to election results in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Their objectives were voted down. Can U.S. spy agencies stop white terror? Daily Beast's Jeff Stein asked in a recent headline, concluding that a call for secret police to sniff out extremist Americans may well get renewed attention. Jeff Stein, a Gino man that has Jim Crow attributes. I'm a Jim Cronian Gino, Jeff Stein. A Jew name only, folks. Under the regime, allegations of election fraud, de facto questioning the legitimacy of the leader, had become incitement of terrorism. YouTube, owned by Google, Facebook, and Twitter, have either banned content that claims the election was rigged or are furnishing it with warning labels. Twitter chief executive Jack Dorsey was recently recorded as saying that banning the president's account was just the beginning. Thank you, James O'Keefe from Project Veritas. The approach closely mirrors that of the Chinese Communist regime, which commonly targets dissidents for subverting the state or spreading rumors. What is the alternative? It calls for radically reorganizing the world are inherently totalitarian. How is the world to avoid them? The question appears to be its own answer. If totalitarianism inherently requires allegiance to its ideology, it can't exist society with a lack of such allegiance. The United States were founded on the idea that individual rights are God-given and unalienable. The idea rooted in traditional beliefs that human morality of divine origin stands a bulwark against any attempts to assail people's rights, even for their own good. If you're not a believer in actual God, you can posit a God's idea on the matter. We have to posit some arbiter who's above and beyond our own prejudices and biases in order to ensure these kinds of rights. Because otherwise, you have this indefinitely malleable situation in which people with power and coercive potential can eliminate and rationalize the elimination of rights willy-nilly, Rechtenwald said. He's absolutely correct, folks. This road to technocracy been enhanced for a very long time. And it started to accelerate since the horrific events on September 11th, 2001, which became the 24/7 excuse for everything. And you got a lot of ungrateful clowns in there, the career politicians that voted for this thing. But that's okay. That's exceptional. But we'll hate one man. He's gone. Step on your own bear trap, right? That's what you're doing to all those political and trapaholics. If you haven't seen the big picture, don't even associate with me. With your know-it-all politics, claiming me, say I'm being a conspiracy theorist and questioning stuff. Yeah, Adolf Hitler used it. And look what happened. Decentralization's the key, folks. And I read in Breitbart yesterday that looks like DuckDuckGo is passing Google. Like more people using that, which is good. We don't need them. Without us, they're done. Jack Dorsey's going to take this for granted. Looks like he wants to take the money and run. And Zuckerberg and all those other hacks. Well, I can tell you this. In due time, it's all going to blow back in their faces. A lot bigger when they least expect it. I'm going to talk about here. From naturalnews.com, Mike Adams wrote this. The way people are handling today's events tells you everything you need to know about their true character. It's truly fascinating. Many patriots, upon seeing Joe Biden sworn in on TV, nothing but a theatrical production, of course, have lost their minds and surrendered to defeat. They had hoped that military arrest of Biden would occur on their desired schedule, because if the timing of the world doesn't match their expectations, they have a fit. Oh yay, of little faith, is patience no longer a virtue? I see freedom-orientated people unleashing vicious attacks today against SGT Report, X22 Report, Red Pill 78, Scott McKay, and others. It is entirely undeserved, as all those channels are run by good-faith people who have consistently done their level best to be transparent and honest in offering their informed views of where things are going. The lashing out against well-meaning people only reveals the emotional immaturity of those doing the lashing. It shows that they were always weak and never really had the spine to hold the line in the first place. Sort of like Jeff Sessions or Mitch McConnell. The real patriots are still fighting for America, have no use for such weak-spirited individuals. The real fight for America begins now. What happened today only underscores the fact that today the real fight for America begins, because we are now fighting for our very survival against totalitarian, corrupt, criminal regime of treasonous actors and malicious, vengeful miscreants who openly calls for us all to be arrested or executed on sight. This is not the time to declare it's over and run and hide. It is the time to steel yourself, steel, S-T-E-E-L, for the coming days and weeks on which the very fate of this nation may turn. Do you really believe there were 65,000 heavily armed troops in D.C. merely to attend a mostly empty fake inauguration event that had virtually zero outside protesters? Do you think Trump abandoned his 80 million supporters and left them hanging in the wind with no plan in place to defeat the enemies of America? Do you somehow think that God will bring us to this moment and utterly fall to offer us a solution that will protect those who recognize his ultimate authority? Those of little faith are out in droves today, screaming, blaming, pounding in anger and rage. It is a pathetic sight, but it shows us much truth. Those true patriots of great faith are doubling down on solutions to overcome tyranny, expose the fraud, and move this nation out of darkness and into light. Whether particular events support us on any given day or not. Joe Biden is not your president, nor anyone's president. The election was unconstitutional. The evidence is abundant. No person sworn in after an illegal election has any legitimate authority whatsoever. The truth will come out. Admittedly, this is not a battle for the meek or for the easily defeated. For some, it seems that today was just too much for them to emotionally bear. Trust me, when I said this day was nothing compared to what's coming, as my Navy SEAL friends like to say, the only easy day was yesterday. You already picked the side of truth and freedom. Don't now abandon it for convenience. If you're not cut for the epic, cosmic battle for human spiritual freedom that now lays in front of us, then go buy yourself a rainbow flag, dye your hair green, and pretend to be a transgender so you can fit in with the enemies of this nation. Tattoo your face like a goblin and get multiple face piercings, uttered random nonsense babble in a loud voice, and the left will accept you as one of their own. For everybody else who still has the spine, stand up straight, declare your loyalty to God and the Constitution, and prepare the arduous path to take this country back from this who seek to destroy it. The path will not be easy. Emotionally weak need not apply. Only those with spiritual commitment and determined are qualified for the next phase of this operation, which is to expose the fraud, build alternative online platforms for communication, and work together at the local level to halt the march of tyranny and defend our civil rights against the deranged, lawless left. And yes, the military still has the option to invoke temporary military authority in the face of overwhelming proof of acts of warfare committed by the communist China against this nation with the aid of Democrats and election fraudsters. This is our duty to God and country. Join us in these peaceful efforts to achieve lasting victory against tyranny. If you don't join, at least don't attack those who are committed to fighting your freedom. Remember, freedom is never given if it is taken. If you aren't willing to take it back, you never deserve any freedom in the first place. You are simply a fair-weather freedom freeloader. The true warriors for freedom never give up the fight and don't get defeated by an emotionally difficult day characterized by 100% stage theatrical events in D.C. More details will be coming in tomorrow's Situation Update podcast, which won't be for the faint of heart. I recommend you've listened to Mike Adams on the Situation Update. And I enjoy his content. I've been following him for at least a good little over 15 years. He has his pros and cons like everybody else. He's human. But the information's always been good. Even when I listen to his shows, I observe responsibly. Never crucify him. Because he's not here talking smack. And all those fair weather fans want to complain to all about the alternative media. You haven't done your job. You're nothing more but a bunch of glamour people. Fashion models. That's all you are. Who let the cows out. With that attitude, pointing a finger at all those sites, you should be wearing a cowbell around your neck because you represent walking antimatter. Having Palmolive hands doesn't give you any merit. Taking action does. What are you folks doing? Have you been doing your own job? Keeping checks and balances within the local state governments as well? Give them a call once in a while. Email them. I do it. I can do more. Which I should. When I have that chance, I do it. Hey, a lot of you folks listen to my show. Trying to send that message of love, of course. We all have obligations. Each and every one of us. If you don't know them, go to the Homeland Security and tell them I am not a citizen of this country. I'm a paper citizen. I like to be deported somewhere, please. Burn your citizenship because you fail to fulfill it. Action conquers fear, folks. Yeah, I know a lot of stuff may be happening. Things can be very disturbing, okay? I say that in good faith. Even including an individual like myself that don't have all the answers. I'm still learning every day. And I like to share this with all you on my intake on life. Always be vigilant. Here's some actions that are going on right now. Notification related. Remember what Biden and Harris talk about gun control? Well, I'm going to do a couple articles on here. This one here came from the 10th Amendment Center.com. Missouri committee holds hearing on bill to take on all federal gun control, past, present, and future. Mike Meharry is a good mate. You should check him out. On Tuesday, Missouri State Committee held a hearing on a bill that would take on federal gun control, past, present, and future. Passage into law would represent a major step toward ending federal acts that infringe on the right to keep and bear arms within the state. Senator Eric Burleson, Republican from Battlefield, filed Senate Bill 39 on December 1st, titled the Second Amendment Preservation Act. The legislation would ban an entity or persons, including any public officer or employee of the state and its political subdivisions, from enforcing any past, present, or future federal act laws, executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, regulations, statutes, or ordinances that infringe on the right to keep and bear arms. On Wednesday, the Senate General Laws Committee held a hearing on the bill. Burleson testified, predicting that President-elect Joe Biden's administration will push for gun control, gun bans directly, magazine bans, attacks on private gun manufacturers, red flag laws, and restrictions on individual citizens from buying firearms, Burleson said. Nobody testified in opposition to the bill, but according to Missouri Net, there was written testimony opposing the measure. Similar bill, HB 85, is awaiting first hearing in the House General Laws Committee. Detailed legislation. This bill includes a detailed definition of actions that qualify as infringement, including but not limited to taxes and fees on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition, not common to all other goods and services that would have a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. Registration and tracking schemes apply to firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition that would have a chilling effect. Any act of forbidding the possession, ownership, or use or transfer of a firearm, firearm accessory, or ammunition by law-abiding citizens. Any act ordering the confiscation of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition from law-abiding citizens. The proposed law defines law-abiding citizens as a person who is not otherwise precluded under state firearm law from possessing the firearm. Under proposed law, infringement on the right to keep bear arms would include the National Firearms Act of 1934, the Gun Control Act of 1938, President Trump's bump stock ban, proposed federal gun laws, and any future gun control schemes implemented by the federal government. The legislation includes a provision that will allow anybody who violates the law and knowingly deprives somebody of their right to keep and bear arms as defined by the law to be sued for damages in civil court. Sovereign, official, or qualified immunity shall not be an affirmative defense in such actions. The bill also includes provisions that would apply to federal agents who knowingly enforce or attempt to enforce any of the infringing acts identified in the law or who give material aid and support to such enforcement efforts. Under the proposed law, they would be permanently ineligible to serve as a law enforcement officer or to supervise law enforcement officers for the state or any political subdivision of the state. This would also apply to state or local law enforcement agents working with federal task force or deputized by federal agencies. In other words, Missouri law enforcement officers who cooperate with feds in a violation of persons' rights to keep and bear arms would lose their jobs and never be able to work in Missouri law enforcement again. Effective. The federal government relies on heavily state cooperation or implement and enforce all of its laws, regulations, and acts, including gun control. By simply withdrawing the necessary cooperation, state and localities can nullify many federal actions in effect, as notified by the National Government Association during the partial government shutdown of 2013, states and partners with the federal government on most federal programs. Based on James Madison's advice for states and individuals in Federal 46, a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union represents an extremely effective method to bring down federal gun control measures. Because most enforcement actions rely on help, support, and leadership from state and local governments. That's the quote. I'll just say here, refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union, unquote. Okay, so sorry about that, folks. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano agreed in a televised discussion on the issue. He noted that a single state taking this step would make federal gun laws nearly impossible to enforce. Partnerships don't work too well when half the team quits, said Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center. By withdrawing all resources and participation in federal gun control, states and even local governments can help bring these unconstitutional acts to their much-needed end. Legal basis: state of Missouri can legally bar state agents from enforcing federal gun control. Refusal to cooperate with federal enforcement rests on the well-established legal principles known as the anti-commandeering doctrine. Simply put, the federal government cannot force states to help implement or enforce any federal act or program. The anti-commandeering doctrine is based primarily on the 5 Supreme Court cases dating back to 1842. Prince versus the U.S. served as a cornerstone. We held in New York that Congress cannot compel the states to enact or enforce a federal regulatory program. Today, we hold that Congress cannot circumvent that prohibition by conscripting the states' officers directly. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the states' officers or those of their political subdivisions and administer to enforce a federal regulatory program. It matters not whether policy making is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of the burden or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. What's next? The Senate General Laws Committee needs to vote on SB 39 and pass it by a simple majority before it can move forward in the legislative process. So I encourage everyone in the Show Me State, push for it. Don't comply to the feds. Nullify. Never get mad. Be inspired. To all you MAGA supporters that live in that state, follow through. Don't cry. Nullify. Action speaks louder than words. Always get inspired. This is why I like to address this to you. And I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, always support this. We need something like this in every state in the union. You know why? Because if they can do, the Biden administration and all those lackeys in there trying to do something like that, it's done. Checkmate. They got nothing. Here's one more state that's doing the same thing. Jose Nino, which he does a lot of great work. He does stuff on Mises.org. He has a podcast, and he does write as columns for Big League Politics. Texas Governor Abbott wants Texas to be a Second Amendment sanctuary. Texas GOP needs to get its act together and start passing pro-2A legislation. Last week, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he wants to turn Texas into a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Patrick Civitek of the Texas Tribune reported on Twitter, Abbott tells TPPF he wants to make Texas a 2A sanctuary state. The session, so that give no government official at any level can come and take your gun away from you, despite those people who say, heck yes, we're going to take your gun. We're going to say, heck no, you cannot take people's guns in Texas. Abbott's quip about taking people's guns was in response to Robert Francis Masturbator, I'll call Masturbator O'Rourke, remarks during the 2019 Democratic presidential debates where he explicitly called for gun confiscation. Abbott tells TPPF he wants to make Texas a 2A sanctuary state this session so that no government official at any level can come and take your gun away from you, despite those people who say, heck yes, we're going to take your gun. We're gonna say, heck no, cannot take people's guns in Texas. So I think I ought to repeat myself there. Sorry about that. Abbott's comments came after a number of Texas counties began to declare themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. Throughout 2020, Daniel Friend of the Texan reported that by early 2020, commissioners in over 60 counties, often with the support of the county sheriff, has passed some sort of Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. 2 elected officials have filed different versions of the Texas Firearm Protection Act, which Greg Abbott pushed back in 2013 when he was Attorney General. The TFPA is a piece of legislation that would ban law enforcement from enforcing federal gun control schemes that purports to regulate a firearm. A firearm accessory or firearm ammunition if the statute, order, rule, or regulation imposes a prohibition, restriction, or other regulation such as a capacity or the size limitation, a registration requirement, or a background check that does not exist under the law of the state. State Representative Stephen Todt introduced House Bill 112, and State Representative Ben Lehman introduced HB 919, both of 2021 versions of the TFPA. At a Texas Public Policy Foundation event, Abbott emphasized his pro-10th Amendment credentials by stating that I still hold a record that never be broken by anybody. I hold the record for most lawsuits filed against Barack Obama, 31 illegal actions against him. The Texas governor added, we had to because the actions he was talking trampled upon Texas liberties based on the 10th Amendment. We need to go back to the fundamentals of the 10th Amendment and reassert that against any potential encroachments that we see under the Biden administration. The sanctuary movement is arguably one of the brightest spots for the right heading into the Biden era. Despite Democrat control at the federal level, there will be more paths for reform available at the state and local level. This should make Second Amendment operatives realize that not all politics is federal. Plus, gaining in power in D.C. necessitates having strong local political machines. Fighting Second Amendment battles at the state and local level is a good way to build a power base. As cliche as it may sound, all politics is still local. He's right. And I'll be honest, this times I'm disappointed with Abbott, but here I give him some thumbs ups. Thank you, sir. Now you're doing something that's right. This is why I get inspired by this. You got a bunch of little cockroaches, tropical cockroaches, in these local levels, including Houston, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth. To name a few cities. Time all you folks in those areas, counter it. Be the Orkin man, Orkin woman. Spray these manifested insects out of your jurisdiction. 10th Amendment is great, folks. And that would be great. Another thing you should do, too, have a 10th Amendment Act with that as well. Because if one don't work, you got the 10th Amendment. And that could be, boom, the two-prong attack. And a lot of those cities that have resolutions in Texas pertaining to the Patriot Act and so forth, when it comes to protecting your rights, you could use that as well. Bro, there's so many things you can do that will drive the tyrannical politicians crazy. So I know folks like Sheila Lee Jackson are probably wigging out. But who the hell cares? Like I said, folks, don't get angry. Get inspired. Don't get mad, get even. Inspiration's the key. Honor your oath. Doesn't matter where you're at. I'm defending and protecting both U.S. and state constitutions. The more you know, the more you implement, the less you fear. And I know one thing. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will have a cow, and you could be laughing right at their faces, including their dumbed-down supporters. And that will be it. Wow, it was an hour. Sorry about that, folks. I thank everyone for listening, plus feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. Furthermore, I'll leave the footnotes of these articles on my Spreaker page. If you want to contact me, you can hit me at LokiLuck number 03 at protonmail.com. Omit the Gmail account. Now I'm going to be just using that just for storage, okay? In addition, if you want to send me donations, you can hit me at paypal.me or cash.app/LokiLuck number 3. And I encourage you to support the other sites I address: 10th Amendment Center, Epoch Times, Big League Politics. If you want to send them donations, that would be awesome as well. Yes, indeed. Let me see here before I hope I didn't goof up here. Yeah. That would be great. Definitely get those. And that's all. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.